Welcome back to Sunlit Brushstrokes. In today's video, I'm going to show you how the right background and details can completely transform your watercolor florals. We're diving into the secrets of creating depth and dimension with techniques like using deeper values, lifting masking fluid for contrast, adding those essential details, and even playing with color contrast, all of which will make your painting come to life. If you're joining me today for the first time, you'll want to check out part 1, where we draw, add masking fluid, and add those initial layers of watercolor in. And don't forget, I do have an outline for this in my Etsy shop so that you can skip the drawing phase and jump right into the painting. Let's go ahead and get started. For the most part, we are onto the detail layer where I want to add just a bit of detail. Again, I'm wanting to keep it loose, but I want a bit of detail. And we need to push the values a little bit deeper and darker. And so I'll probably have to kind of like skip around a little bit more with my petals so I don't do, the petals that are touching. But let's do this one. Let's add some water. And I might switch over to using a little bit more of these firmer brushes just for a little bit more water control, just a tiny bit. So I'm going to come in here down at the very base and just throw more of that deep, nice dark quinacridone rose. You can see I'm going super dark, super concentrated. There's even going to be a tiny little dark spot later, but I like how dark that's got. So I'm going to leave it be like that. And you know what? I could actually come in here and start kind of refining this little shape here. So there's the dark kind of comes into here. So I'm going to put the dark here and some along here. I'm going to have to soften some edges here really quick here. But let's just go ahead and get some more nice deep dark red. And I know I'm working on two petals that are right side by side, but we're going to be okay, and you'll see it. It'll shape up okay. This actually can come a little bit further into here. I have to still refine that. This is the one shape that still needs to be refined. So we'll see that come together fairly soon here, because yeah, we should get that shape, at least get some color on there. But anyways, I've gone ahead and put my red in right here, and I'm just going to soften things. So I'm just going to come along here and kind of like so, and then I'll just grab my clear brush. So I do have my Artegria right now. It's putting a little bit more water on here and just softening. So basically just keeping us from having a hard edge where we just drop that nice deep dark pink. Okay, we can work on this shape because it's kind of by itself. So I'm going to go ahead, and like I say, this is where we can start adding a little bit more detail. I'm going to take this purple color and I'm going to do a hard edged shadow. So I know I'm getting a little bit more on the detail side. I'm going to come like this first. This is just going to be one of the shadows created by the stamen. And then I am taking artistic license. You can totally see that. I'm not following the photo exactly, but I do see a nice shadow under here, nice hard edges. So I'm going to just do that. So I'm just kind of inventing, kind of looking at the photo, not being super precise. Then I'm going to grab a tiny touch of that nice deep quinacridone rose again, so straight on my palette, dropping it right up here. So you can see you kind of have like a nice purpley shadow with some really intense deep reds kind of towards the top area. And I know there's even one that's almost like a dark purple. We're going to put those on at the very end, but I think I'm happy with that. So I think, can we do this? Yeah, we can do this shadow here too, or that petal rather. I'm just gonna, like I say, I think I might just work with my Simply Simon's brushes now, just so I have a bit more control. You know what I'm gonna do actually is just put those shadows on there. Let's just do that. Let's get our purple coming here. And I can see a nice shadow edge here. I can actually put a little bit more blue into this. Okay, nice hard edge along here. Drag it down. We're going to separate these petals a bit now. I'm liking that. And then I'm going to just dab a little bit of the paint off because I feel like I'm a little too wet. And you can kind of see these shadows being created by the stamen, right? You can kind of just see them like so. I'm just going to draw them in there lightly. And put a little bit more here. And then we definitely want those few little balls. And you can see I'm not copying these perfectly. I'm just taking a little artistic license, getting them approximate, using my photo as a guide, not trying to be hyper perfect. That's not a word, hyper perfect. Dear. It's a new word. I think that's a good word for me. Just soften that up a little bit. Okay. I think I'm okay with that for now. let's move on. No, let's not move on. Let's drop a little bit of that quinacridone in there too, since we're at it. Uh-oh, they're touching. Never mind. I'm going to let that be because I realized those petals, they are actually touching right there, and the paint, it will flow together. So let's just lift a little bit. Let's just do this. We can fix that after. Let's move on to maybe throw a little bit of detail. Let's just add a tiny, tiny bit to this petal. Not much. I'm actually almost wondering about like doing something to create almost another petal in here to create a bit of variety. Yeah, let's wait and do that after. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with that one. So we'll leave that be for now. Okay, I'm going to do this petal again, not because I have to, but because remember I dropped like a little bit of that quinacridone rose and I put like a really strong drop of it. So I'm going to just try and put a little more purple down here and then a little more quinacridone rose and hopefully almost like blend that. You could say that's, I don't know if you want to say a happy or sad accident, right? Because it was just almost like a blotch. And blotchiness has its place, but just reducing the blotchiness. Okay. And that was just because I was fixing something I did. You maybe don't have a blotch of paint that you dropped on there, in which case you don't have to necessarily deepen this any further. Okay. Let's go ahead and work on this one down here. Now this one has some really, really neat shadows happening. So I'm going to use the purple for that. And I'm going to just come like so, using a hard edge. Just drag that on there. I'm going to add a little bit of deep quinacridone up here. Not as much as my deepest areas before, but a little bit, right? We don't want to have a solid, boring purple shadow. We want some variety there. And then we'll make it join somewhere like here. Oh, you can see I dropped, it's goofy where I dropped the water. It's fine. I'll come back and fix that. And drop. Basically, I'm just creating the shadow on this petal. Let's throw a little bit of water on this section here, lighten things off. I was getting a little bit of a bloom. And again, quinacridone at the top. You can kind of see a nice deep color in here. This is where I'm starting to get almost a little bit realistic, but not crazy so. Okay, let's leave that. Define this just a little, make the shape a little bit different here. Yeah, and then we'll leave it alone. Okay. Enough messing around, Jessica. Let's go ahead and work on this one a little bit too. So the same sort of things happening. We're just going to grab that purpley color for our shadows, drop it in, and kind of come about down to here, except there is, I'm going to use my clean brush. So I just clean my brush to kind of pull that shadow up a little bit. I don't mind it being soft. It is hard edged in the photo sort of, so we could do that. But like I say, I'm starting to get photorealistic even though I didn't draw it perfectly realistically. So keep it loose. Basically, you can just get some shadow color on this petal and then drop in some quinacridone once again, kind of towards the center of our flower. And you can see there's like a dark purple that's coming later. So just get the quinacridone on for now. And let's see, where can we go next? Everything's kind of in the wet stage or touching something that's wet. I think what we could do is take a little artistic license and just drop a tiny, tiny little bit of purple in here for shadows. It doesn't really, you can't really see that happening so much in this one, but I think it would add a little bit of variety. So I'm going to do that just a little bit. Just put a little bit of that shadow color up there. Okay. Now, this will need to dry more before we can work in here, but that definitely needs to be done. And we're almost going to want to start pulling off our masking fluid because we're going to have to refine things once we do that. Let's work on both these shapes here, even though they're, yeah, I feel like I need to wait because I want that one to, well, let's try this one. Let's try this one. It's touching, but I think we might be able to get away with it. I'm going to just get some basic shadows on here first, and then I'll come and refine them in a minute. I know my shapes aren't perfect, but there are some shadows here, so it's worth getting them on here. And then dropping in some deep quinacridone once again. Quinacridone rose just gives us a beautiful, deep, rich color as we're coming up closer to the center of our flower. And then this one, you know what? Yeah, I want this one to maybe have a harder edge. It actually isn't that hard edged in the photo, but because this is wet, I'm going to let this dry, just like this dry a little bit before I do this one. The other thing I'm going to do with this petal, and this is taking a little artistic license, there really isn't a lot of detail on here, but I'm going to try and push it because I got a little bit of paint on there. This is optional because I kind of got, like I say, paint where I didn't want it. I'm going to surround that area. So this area is now dry, right? But the back petal I wet, put that purple on, and I'm making this little section kind of pop, if you will. So just put a little bit of that color, not too much, just lift some of it out. I just want to create kind of a bit of a difference between this petal and the back one. I could throw a bit more red if I don't want to get too purple, just because we are doing a pink flower, right? We're not doing a purple flower. The shadow is more purpley, but you want to make sure you don't go overboard with your purples. Okay, I think I'm happier with that. What do you guys think? I think it added a little bit of depth there. Okay, I'm going to let it dry once again because everything is touching just a little bit much for what I want to still do. All right, let's get on to that little shape in there that is just calling my name because we have not done it yet. So I'm going to use my Simply Simon's brush, come in here with some water and just get that kind of wet, and then go ahead with my light pink. So now things are going to start to finally kind of shape up over here. Get that light pink on there, and then definitely we can go in with some deeper kind of the quinacridone, just basically straight off her palette into here. And just kind of refine the edge of the petal in front of it a little bit. Something like that, but I'm going to soften things a little bit. I just want to come in with a little bit stronger quinacridone at the very base. And then let's just soften the edge. There is actually some hard edges in there. You can kind of see some different purple shapes. I still feel like I could get deeper and darker with that quinacridone. It's just not quite going on there heavy enough, probably because we're working with a bit of water. It's already wet, but we're going to be able to get it darker in a minute here. I think that's better. And where else do I want to put a little bit more quinacridone rose? I think a little bit down here. So now I'm just working wet on dry, and then I'll just soften it a little tiny bit. Just like so. And like I say, we're going to come back in there in a little while. This is the shape I'm actually wondering about changing it again. It's a major artistic license, but I'm wondering about changing it and making it look like there's another petal, kind of like, almost like this is a petal and then it's separated from that one. Do you see what I'm saying? Let's try that. I think I might like it. Maybe I'll even make it a little bit taller like that. Let's try that. This is definitely taking artistic license. Just going to erase that first line I did. Whoops. Like so, and then I'll just lighten things a little bit, and you're going to see how I separate those in a minute. We definitely don't want them separated by the pencil line. We're going to separate them by changes in our paint values. So we're just going to go in with some water right along the edge like that. And then we're going to come in with our nice deep red that's on our brush, and we're going to separate it from this other side. Do you see what I'm just doing now? So it almost looks like there's another petal, and that's not something you see in the photo, but I just felt like it was like just really boring over here. So that adds a little interest. And maybe we could even add a few, I don't know, you can't really see a whole lot in terms of shadow shapes over here, but I'm just going to add a few little lines with my quinacridone red, and we'll soften them up a little bit here with our brush. Something like that. So we have a little bit of texture, a little bit of variation. Again, this isn't really the focal point of the painting. It just was feeling a little bit flat or boring to me. So just kind of soften that up. You can see my page is curling, so it's kind of trying to hold it in place. All right, so we just need to do this one here. We never really did anything with it, but I'm actually not even minding how it looks. We could use our purple, and just put a little bit of shadow on here because we could create a little bit more of a, again, the look of cast shadows from our little stamen. So let's just kind of come in here, just drop kind of just something like this. You can see quite a few little cast shadows in the reference photo. So I'm just going to do that. And then do some little dots here. Yeah, I think that's okay. What do you guys think? And then we'll drag it to the back, or not to the back, but kind of to the base. And then we're going to just drop a little bit more of our quinacridone rose in here just to give it some depth. And I'm going to go ahead, while I've got the quinacridone rose on my brush, and create a little bit of a harder edge right here. You're probably wondering why I haven't done that yet. There is a nice hard edge there, so we're just going to drop that quinacridone rose in and put a little bit there. Again, a hard edge. Something like so. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that now. Where else can we do a little bit of paint? Do we want to add some definition to these little buds? Just a tiny bit. We're going to do that dry. So I'm coming on with my dry brush with a little bit of paint. Just throwing a little bit of that on, and then we're going to soften it. So put it on there, and then just use my wet brush and just soften that a little bit. And put a little bit over here too. Again, we're getting a little bit tight, but I'm not minding that. Just a little bit of definition in these buds. A little bit in that one. Really, it's almost just creating the effect of there being like another petal, right? Two little petals together in each bud. I'll come this way with this one. There. Now this is starting to dry. It's not 100% dry, but I'm going to come in and do a little bit more detail here. Just putting a little more red at the base. All right, now I'm thinking what I might do is let this dry so that then I can peel off the masking fluid, because I know I'm going to have to refine things when I do that. So I'm going to go ahead and dry it, then we'll do the masking fluid, then we'll come back in and do, you know what, let's let that dry naturally, and let's just go ahead and do the branch. And then we can also do the little bits of green. So I have over here just some ugly colors going. I've got kind of a rusty color, and this is basically created using all three primaries, right? You can make a brown by using all three primaries, and that's what I do, because I work with my three primaries. I just have two blues just because I do like the ultramarine for purples. I mentioned that before, but it's worth repeating. And so I'm going to go ahead and use this kind of brownish color I've got here. Just quickly lay in this branch. And I'm kind of using a little bit of a skipping motion. I'm using my firmer brush. Oh, sorry, I'm kind of running off the page, or running out of the camera almost. Just drop that in there. I'm going to be getting some more detail in a minute, but just want to get this on here as our first layer. Got a little drip of water there. Okay, and maybe I put a little bit in here. We are going to get some leaves kind of in here as well. Yeah, let's do that, and then just throw a little bit more. Let's go ahead and take this and just drop a little bit more of the ultramarine blue into this orangey color, and that is going to give us a little bit of a deeper, darker brown, and it's more concentrated. So I'm going to use that along the bottom edge of this. And I don't know, I think we need a little bit, oh, we'll put a little bit down in here too. And then maybe we'll get a little bit of warmth happening. So I'm going to just grab some of this coral color. This was just yellow and quinacridone rose. I'm going to make a lighter color that's a little bit more orangey, a little more washed out. Give us a bit of warmth kind of at the top of the branch, just so we have some variety. I might even put a little bit of purple at the base too, because I feel like it's looking kind of boring because it's just one color, kind of all brownish. I want to get a little bit of purple in there, so I'm just going to grab a little purple off my palette. So this purple that's down here, let's just throw a little bit of that in there too, so we get just some nice variety, and this will help to harmonize things because we do have a lot of beautiful purples in our painting. And we could even, I think that might be okay for now. We could always throw a bit of pink in there if we wanted to, but I'm going to leave it be for now. And I'm seeing a little hint of both pink and green and brown in the little bud leaves. So why don't we go ahead with this color and just lay it down first in these little leaves, just in some places. I'm just going on dry on dry. And I'm going to come back in with my greens after, but I'm basically just getting a little bit of this color going. So I'll put a little bit there. Maybe I'll throw a little bit more here, a little bit here. I'm totally taking artistic license, but I think I'm going to be happy with that. All right, should we throw a little bit of purple into those little leaves too? We could. Let's do that. Let's throw a little purple in, and then we'll come back and do the green after. While I have my purple on my brush, I'm just noticing I could do this little tiny purple or whatever, this little folded part of this leaf. It's a little more of a purple color if you look at the reference photo, and it is darker. So I'm just going to do that a little bit darker. In this shape here, I'm going to just put a nice soft kind of pinky color. I'm just using my firm brush and just going ahead and filling that in, almost like wiping the edge of it too, because I wouldn't mind softening the edge of this petal. Put a little bit here also. You really can't see too much of it, and I almost kind of I wasn't paying attention, but I put my brown there. It was kind of, that's one thing when you have really light lines, sometimes you kind of lose your shapes, and if you're not paying attention, it can disappear on you, but that's okay. I'll mess with it in a little bit. I'll just get that a little bit dabbed off, and we'll come in and do that afterwards. Let's go ahead and add some greens. Let's go ahead and get some of this nice bright green, and I'm going to make a darker green as well, and we'll use that for our leaves, and we'll use a little bit of purple as well with our leaves. So I'm just going to go ahead. I've got a nice bright green from another project, so I'm just going to moisten that a bit. And then over here I had some dark green, but it's basically gone, so I'm just going to quickly make up a little bit by grabbing a little bit of my yellow here and some of my blue. Either blue is fine, and I'll have to tone it down with some red. I probably need a little bit more blue here is my guess, but let's move this into the camera so you can see it better. And yes, let's just throw some blue. Like I say, either blue will work. Okay, I'm going to put those on a little page so you can see exactly what colors I've got here. I actually think I have more of the phthalo blue. Okay, we're getting more blue than I want. I think I need to throw a little bit more of our yellow. I think I made that a little too blue, so I'm just going to go ahead, try the ultramarine. Yeah, even a little bit more of our pinky color just to get that a nice dark rich green. Here I've got a piece of paper, just a scrap of paper, and you can see I've got a nice dark green, which I'm not loving a lot. I really like the nice light green that I have here, and so I'll probably mainly use the light green and then just drop a little bit of the dark green in a few places. So let's go ahead and drop some leaves in here. Move these out of the way. Actually, you know what? That dark green there, I wasn't even paying attention. That would have been fine too. Oh well. I'm going to grab my smallest Ortegria brush because I want to be nice and loose here. And I'm going to start with my light green, and I'm going to just do it like where you come on with very light pressure at the base of the leaf, then go heavier with the belly of the brush, and then lighten off. I'm just going to do that. Super simple loose leaves here. I don't want to do anything too fancy because the painting, I feel like we've already taken quite a lot of time to do the little blossoms. So I'll just make this faster and easier. Just throw a little bit in here, just like part of a leaf. And then we can come in a minute here and drop in some greens into our little buds as well. But let's just get this on here quickly. Ooh, slapped up a little bit on that one. Overworking that leaf. Let's just try from a different angle. Let's do something like that. Okay. Alrighty, then I'll drop in a little bit of dark green. I could use either dark green. I'm actually liking that one better. But let's just put a little bit of both. And just drop it kind of like along the bottom edge, and you can see it just kind of flows around. It just creates a little nice loose effect. Put a little bit on the base of this one, a little bit on the base of this one. Yeah, something like that. And then I'm going to go ahead, because we do want to create a little bit of harmonized color here. I'm going to drop a little bit of purple into it as well, just because those leaves are kind of going to stand out otherwise a little bit too much like a sore thumb, if that makes sense, or just stand out a bit more than we want them to. So I'm going to drop a tiny bit of this purple color in here just to create some harmony. So I'm just grabbing the purple right off the center of my palette and I'm dropping it kind of into the base, just in a few spots, not blending it, just letting it like get on there and then be. And then I'm going to go ahead and try and work on these little buds a little bit too, like on the little leaves of the buds. So I'm just going to put some water in there and just drop a little bit of green into them. See if I'm happy with this. I'm not thinking I'm going to be happy with this light green. I think I'm going to have to use the dark green. Just put a little bit of dark green at the base. Let's see. Let's try that again on this one, see if we're still happy with it. So put some water. It has dried enough because I took some time to mix up my colors. Drop a touch of dark green, kind of closer to the base. Let that move around. I'm just going to grab another brush so I don't have to keep washing this one. Okay, this one, mainly water. Yeah, it's clear water. Just wetting these tiny little leaves. And then just drop some of that nice deep dark green closer to the base and closer to the base. And then once again on this one. I'm gonna make it like attach a little bit to the tree. What do you guys think? Should we throw a little bit of the lighter green in there too? I like that dark green, but we'll probably put a little bit of the light green on the areas where there is more light. I think we can get away with a bit of light green. Yeah, I think that worked. I think it's kind of harmonized and pretty. I might throw just a tiny bit more purple on this one. It's kind of bugging me a little bit. That there. Okay, all right, so we have our leaves, and now what we can go ahead and do is remove our masking fluid. Now this part you're going to just want to use, you can use an eraser or there are masking fluid removers. I just tend to kind of rub it until I get it going. Sometimes I'll use an eraser to help me, and then I just rub like this. So I'm going to go ahead and work off my masking fluid a little bit, rubbing it off, and then I'll be back. All right, so you can see how bold and stark that is when I take that masking fluid off. So now we've got to go ahead and just kind of fill that area in, but I think we're going to be able to do that fairly easily. What I want to do first is grab my yellow. So I've got some like plain yellow here, got some kind of muddy colors, and so I'm okay with just the muddy yellow stuff that I've already got on my palette. If you don't have any muddy yellows on your palette, you really could just make a muddy yellow by throwing a little bit of like the brownish color we already made, using your other primary colors, some blue and some red. Not much of them. It would be more on the like mostly yellow, tiny bit of red, and then like barely any blue to get yourself some muddy yellows. So we're gonna just go ahead and put some of these on here, just the little tiny pollen things at the top. So I'm gonna just go ahead, and I might even go use some water in some of these. Some of these feel almost too stark. I'll jump around and get these on here first. And I'm not really paying attention to which ones are exactly where on the photo. Again, you saw me take artistic license as I applied my masking fluids. So this is basically what I'm doing now, is just kind of randomly coming in here with my yellow, slightly dull yellow color. And then I'll come back in after with my reds at the very end and add a few reds. And I'll probably come with a deeper yellow too, but I want to get the lighter yellow one first. And you can see it would have been really hard to paint all around these had we done them at the beginning. You could, there's no reason you can't just do darker little parts on your flower instead of doing them as being lighter. And I don't know, I didn't like the look as much. I've kind of played around a little bit with these blossoms, and I thought, I think I'm going to be happier with masking it, but there's no reason you couldn't just make these like a nice deep dark color, almost like a blackish purple or something. That would work too. So I'm just adding a bit of water just to kind of soften some of these a little tiny bit. And then I'm going to come in with a slightly darker yellow and deepen some of them. So I just want to get this nice soft kind of looking yellow first, just by adding, you don't really need to even add this extra water. I just felt like some of them could have been softened. Okay, now what I want to do is maybe take some of my brownish color and put a little bit of that, a little bit more of that. Actually, I even have some on my palette, but just get a slightly darker yellow color here. And just come in and drop a little bit of that. It's blending around too much. You know what? I'm going to wait and do that after. I'm going to let that be. Well, some of them, let's see. You really just want them to not be too wet. You don't want this color to flow around and you lose your lightest yellows, if that makes sense, right? As long as you can see that the dark, when you kind of come in a few spots, not everywhere, just in some spots, some areas you're able to maintain your dark color, you're good. So we're dry enough down here. I didn't have to go ahead and dry it. You're just going to have to see. You can always give it a minute to just sit and it will probably dry in there enough that you'll be good. You're going to be good to go. But just be aware. If your yellows are too wet, things will flow too much. Okay. I'm getting a bit too dark here. And you don't want perfect little dots like I'm getting here. I'm going to kind of stretch them out a little bit so they're a little bit more abstract looking. Let's try back over here now. Yeah, I think we're okay. I think we're dry enough. I'll throw a little bit of brown on some of them too. Again, not covering your yellows, just kind of almost like creating, almost like just a little bit of a shadow to them or a little bit of a differentiation in the way they look so that they're not all perfectly bright yellow. Okay, now I'm going to come in with some pink or my quinacridone rose, and we're just going to once again put a little bit of that color because you can see some of these are red rather than yellow, right? So let's just do that in a few places. So some of them you can do nice and concentrated, some you can let them be a little bit more washed out. And again, we're going to try to get little dot shapes that aren't perfect circles. You can look at your reference photo or just kind of come in and take little artistic license. You want to kind of cover any areas that we still have looking like a dot. You want to make sure that they're filled in. We don't have white dots left. And you can do some of them deeper, like I say, deeper, darker red, some of them with slightly lighter reds. You can even overlap some of them with your yellows if you feel like, got too much yellow. Throw a little bit of red in there. I'm just going to go over in a few more spots, just throwing these in, and then we're going to go ahead and deal with these little spindle shape things. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. I think I'm probably dry enough. I can come in with my rose now. I might use a little bit of the rose color, a little bit of this kind of purpley shadow color that we were using before. So I've got both these colors on the go. And we don't want to be too dark now for all these little, like I say, all these little lines. We don't want to be too dark. We're going to get darker as we get to the base, but for this part up here, we just want to kind of lightly fill them in. We don't want them to be perfectly stark white, but we definitely want them lighter than what we've done, kind of the shadows around them, right? So we're just like very, very lightly, softly filling them in with a little bit of this either pinky or pinky purple color. And my brush is fairly dry, and I can see here, I'm going to work around this shape. I don't want to lose that. I kind of actually had it partly masked before, but I like how it's looking right now. I'm going to come right to the bottom, but I will be darkening the bottom. So as I come up closer to the base, that's where I can come in with a bit of this richer quinacridone rose, like straight off the palette here, and just drop that in kind of like that. And you can see we're kind of filling that in. Just going to put a little bit more purple. Just, like I say, it's in some ways it seems like, is it worth all the hassle of having masked it for covering it up? But you can see it has made a difference, right? Some places I'm putting a little bit more of my shadow color than others. Might have overdone it from what I would like, so I'm just going to grab myself a paper towel, a little piece, and just blot before it gets too dry. You wouldn't have to cover them as much as I did in terms of, you know, if you feel like you want brighter whites in there, just don't put as much purpley pink color on top. I think on this one, I kind of wish I would have left a little bit more light, in which case I can just kind of dab, put a little bit of water and dab, because I haven't let it dry too much yet, so it'll lift. And we can come over here. Now these ones do almost disappear into the flower itself. A little bit more pink. But if you want to leave a little bit of white behind, you can. Like you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm just going to fill this in a little bit and kind of lift that because I feel like I put a little more purple than I needed. I bought it with a little bit of tissue. Okay. You know what? I didn't cover all my little pollen things here, but that's okay. I'll do that after. I'm just going to put a little bit more pink to kind of, whoops, not that much. Kind of fill this up a little bit. I'm just going to blot it. I want them to kind of look sort of like they're there, but just barely, because you can see them barely in the reference photo. I'd rather have them, I think, on this one a little less pronounced than maybe too strong, but that's kind of up to you how you would like to do that. I might put a little more red on some of these. I don't know, I feel like they're almost just too yellowy. Could be the color of yellow I've got here that's not quite the yellow that I want. I realized I didn't quite fill in every little dot here, so I'm just going to put a little bit more. I feel like I've got more yellow here than I actually want. I probably, if you wanted to, you could always fill some of these in just with pink if you're feeling like you've kind of gone overboard with your little dots here. I feel like I almost am overboard with my little dots here, but just try and blend them in a little bit. It's okay. It's kind of interesting. When I masked this, I should have maybe added a few more little lines there, but I didn't, so I'm just going to let that be. I'm going to fill these ones in a little bit so that they're not super stark. I know there are some nice stark ones in the photo, but I didn't mask far enough down on this one. Again, anytime I feel like I'm going too dark, I'll just put a little bit of that pigment on there, blot it, put it on, blot it. Kind of like that. And then when I come over to the center of this, I'm going to be using more of my quinacridone rose to kind of push things a little bit. And this particular petal, I definitely would like to come in a little bit more like this. Just kind of like so, just to kind of get things nice and dark in here. This is where you can kind of make some of these disappear almost into the deeper red color. Like so, and I'll just very gently lift a little bit. I don't want to go too crazy with my lifting. Again, I have my paper towel here to blot because I'm just wanting to get it just, yeah, kind of like that. I feel like it needs a little something where I didn't get my little lines. What I could do if I really wanted to is I could grab watercolor pencil or even gouache and put a few lines there. I'm not sure if I want to do that or not. We'll see. Let's put a little bit of water on here and just add a little something to this one. It feels like it's a little bit lacking. So this is where you can kind of come in and just accentuate any areas with a little more shadow color or a little bit of your pink. I'm just working wet on dry at this stage. Just kind of push anything that I want to push a little bit further with either shadows or details. All right, so last of all, I want to come in and just add those tiny little spots that almost look like they're black, but they're really, really dark purple. So I'm just going to take this dark purple color that I've got in my palette here, and I'm just going to drop a tiny little bit of it in where I can see that, just to add a little bit more drama, a little more punch to this. So I'll put them in there as best as I can, and then I'll just dab a little bit if they're a little bit too stark. Because I've got very strong pigment on my brush here. This one is a little different shape than you see in the photo just because of where I've placed my little stamen. But I think I'm okay with that. Just dab it off because, like I say, it's very, very stark. And then I see a little bit over here. And I'll just kind of almost give the impression that there's a little bit kind of between these little stamen. Again, dab over here, just because I don't want it to be too strong over that direction. Maybe put a little bit here. My brush is getting a little more diluted now, which is okay. And a little bit over here. I think that mainly is it. I might put a little bit here and then just blend it out, because it's definitely not a strong dark spot there. Just blend it out a little bit like so. Then I'm going to come in with a bit more red. I've got some of that purpley color still on my brush, and just put a little bit kind of in this area here. Just, okay, I'm too wet right now. Put a little bit of water there, but just want to add a little bit more red into this section. Again, sort of taking artistic license, not following the photo completely, because as you know, we took artistic license when we first laid those stamen in. And now I'm going to soften things a little bit here. They are looking pretty stark as it's drying. Sometimes it's hard to know when you're putting it on wet what it's going to look like when it dries, but as it continues to dry, I'm going, you know what, I'm going to soften that a little bit and soften this a little bit. Basically, I'm just using my brush that's got the red on it to soften things. Yeah, I think I'm okay with that. Now with this one that I kind of lost, I'm just going to tweak the shape a little bit like that. You can see flowers are pretty forgiving. You couldn't do this on a portrait, but with flowers, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to just call that the edge of that little petal there and pretend it's folded a little different than I see in the reference photo, and just make that brown just that smidgen bit stronger, and call that good. So you can see flowers, yes, flowers are forgiving, which is nice. Goes to show you can kind of use a reference photo, and even if you kind of deviate from it more than you intended, it's repairable. The other thing that I want to do to help this kind of pop out or show a little bit better is that there's a very, very light shadow. Let's grab my shadow color. Just in here, you can kind of see that, right? In the reference photo, again, this isn't, you don't have to copy the reference photo, but that does help accentuate that little petal, right? So we can do that, and it looks really pretty that way. So I'm just going to go dab, dab. And now you can clearly see, I might even just push that a little further, make it actually attach to this back here a little bit, and then dab it once again. Again, I don't want it to be too dark, but just kind of there. And now you can see that's kind of popping a little bit more. That petal looks like it's actually more or less there. The background's going to help with that as well. But I'm going to first get rid of some of these pencil lines that I can, that are around the edge, because they're kind of sticking out like a sore thumb to me right now, because I didn't come right to the edge everywhere, which is good. I kind of like that because I can erase them, but make sure I'm dry everywhere. Just get some of those off, and then I will throw the background on. And that's going to help make some of these petals pop. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the water on. I do need to make my water come further out than what my background is. You can see I kind of splattered things a little bit on here, but that's okay. I'm just using this wide 1-inch brush. You can use any brush. I'm not coming up to the petals right now. I'm going to do that with a smaller brush, but I just want to get my paper wet. So I'm going to do that really quickly. I'm going to turn my page like so as well, so that I can do the top easier. Just speed up the process a little bit for myself. You can turn your page however is comfortable for you. And I'm going to then quickly, I want to be careful, those white petals, that I don't make them vanish into the background. Then I'll take my thicker brush, my round brush, this Artegria brush, and I'll just come up to the edges here. Sometimes I don't even fill right to the very edge of the petal. Sometimes I'll leave a little space, and then it gives me a little bit of freedom to come in with the paint and carve that edge out with the paint. So do what works for you. So I'm just going to go around everywhere quickly with my water, filling up to the edges of my petals, and then I'll be back. All right, so I'm ready to come in with some paint. And I don't want to add a lot. I just want to really accentuate the petals. I probably won't even come to the edge of the painting. You can see my green is bleeding out a bit here. One benefit to doing the petals the background kind of as you go is that you will have sometimes not that bleeding. Like you can see that little bit of green happening there. We could have added that green at the end, but that's okay. We're just going to put a little bit of this green in. You can see we're very, very wet, but overall, I'm happy with this because I think it's going to help make these flowers pop. So I just want just enough green to kind of give the impression that, yes, these flowers do have some definition to them. And let's just move this a little bit like this. I feel like I need a little bit of, there we go. try and keep upright for you guys. You don't feel like you're hanging upside down watching this. I don't want that much green coming out away from the flowers. I just want a very, very small amount. Just want to have just enough. Like I say, you can see I actually painted the flower there a bit. Not so smart. And just come up to this, see if I can give it a little bit of texture with how I apply my paint. Because that's the purpose of this, is just to help define some of these petals that were a little bit light, because I didn't, rather than defining them by darkening the petals themselves with paint, we're defining them by darkening the background with paint, and it just makes it pop. When I have a white flower or a flower with more lightness on it, that's where I really like a background. Blend that around just gently. I think I'm almost happy with it. Like I say, I don't want much on the background. I want these to be almost like they are like a standalone image, but just, this will help. So just blend that a little bit. I think I even have probably a touch of red on my brush, which is giving me a slightly neutral green. I think I'm happy with that. But you can definitely take artistic license at this stage and do whatever works best for you. I'm getting a bit dry over here, so I gotta be careful. Yeah, I think I like that on the bottom. So now I'm gonna just flip it and do the same thing kind of at the top. I don't think there's as much, but right here I want to define it. So I'm gonna drop some green, come in with this nice sharp tip. This brush, this Arte Gris brush has a nice tip on it, so it works well for this. It should work quickly because I feel like I'm getting a bit drier up here. I could have almost waited and added the water to the top afterwards so that I didn't chance getting things dried out, but it's fine. We can always add a little water if we need to. This is the area right here that I really want to have pop and look a little more defined. So making sure I hit that first, and then I'll just kind of come around and just gently fade things out. I don't want to have sharp, goofy lines from this brush, but I think, there we go, that's better. I need more water up here because I can tell things are kind of getting a little bit strange dry. And if they're in between, that's where we can end up with some edges that we don't really want. So I'm just going to quickly grab my 1-inch flat again and just quickly re-wet things just so that we're not getting strange things happening. And then I'm just going to drop a tiny bit more green. I don't want, like I say, I don't want too much, just enough to kind of help define these little flowers. You can kind of think about how you're creating some eye movement in your painting as you do this, but I think I want to kind of give it a little bit more of that diagonal kind of push this way because that's the way things are moving. So I might just throw a bit more green up this direction, maybe a tiny bit of the dark green, just because we're kind of getting it. We don't want to like a dark green halo, right on the flowers. We want to kind of pull that green, pull it around a bit. We really just want to avoid having a halo is what we're after here. And I feel like I'm getting a halo. Part of it's because of the way my paper's bending. It just wants to run that way. Turn it a little bit. Try and avoid our green halo. Okay. Do I want more green in here? I guess we could make it pop with a tiny bit of green. A little green right in there. And then a little bit along the edge here. Yeah. Maybe a little bit of dark green too. Kind of mushing into the bud a little bit. We probably could have even had a little bit more green on that bud, but I think it's okay. I'm just gonna leave it, like I say, I want this to be sort of loose and free still. Just put a tiny bit of dark green in here. And while I'm here, I'm gonna just wet this shape a tiny little bit. I want to push this lower part a little bit further back. So I'm just gonna put just a little bit of water there. So I'm kind of working wet on wet. And then I'm just gonna grab a little bit of my rose, a little bit of purple, and I want it fairly strong. And I'm just gonna drop a tiny little bit right in here. I know it's not really like that dark in the photo, but I want to separate that extra petal that I created, right? Just give the impression that there's some separation, and this petal is behind this little one that we kind of created. So something like that. Could even create a little texture. That's okay too. Okay, gonna call that good. Oh, and I'm just noticing where my background kind of ran in here. I tried to kind of wipe it, but of course that doesn't work, right, when everything's wet. So I'm just using my firm brush and just gently wetting that and cleaning that off. And then I'm gonna use a paper towel and I'm gonna blot, because otherwise that green might run back in. I have to be kind of careful with this at this stage, but I think I'm dry. Yeah, my green is probably dry enough. Just smooth that out. Again, just showing you how to fix things if you have problems. And there you have it. By adding those details, contrasting colors, and deeper values, we've created a painting that has depth and dimension, bringing our watercolor florals to life. If you've enjoyed this video, you're going to want to check out my watercolor playlist where you can find more videos like this one. In the meantime, I hope this tutorial has brought a little taste of God's beauty and peace into your everyday life, and that it's inspired you to continue enjoying your own creative journey. See you again soon. Bye.